Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final session of the 2021 CCDEH training series. My name is Jeff Lamore, and I am the current president of CCDEH. The training series was developed by CCDEH's Professional Development Committee to make up for the cancellation of this year's CHA conference. Each session will be recorded and CEUs will be available to all. The fee for each session is $25. You can also go to CCDEH's video library for recorded sessions to obtain your additional CEUs. So you'll see there's a number of training opportunities available on the video libraries. Please take advantage of that. In order to obtain your CEUs, you must complete and submit the evaluation form at the end of each session. So please make sure you enter your full name and email address. There we go, Tim is taking us to that section there. So make sure you complete that. Make sure you complete your evaluations, all evaluations by June 4th. And the goal is to issue the certificates on or around June 7th. So please be patient for that. There will be a question and answer period at the end of today's training session, so please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. I'd like to thank Justin Milan, Cheryl Baldwin, Tim Snelling, and Freddie Adrian for their work on developing the training series. With that, I'd like to introduce Freddie Adrian, Environmental Health Director with the City of Vernon and the Chair of the Professional Development Committee. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Freddie.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for joining. We're in for another treat. So if you missed last week, we have a great speaker, and I'm going to introduce him. I think he has such an impressive resume, so bear with me while I go through his bio. So John is the founder of CBL Training and Consulting, which was established in 2004. He has served as a sergeant in the major California law enforcement agency, leading a series of intervention training units. He has worked street patrol, investigations, and as an academy instructor, which include criminal law, impaired driving, and physical training. He's been certified as a drug recognition expert, investigator, including narcotics, homicide, crime scene, sex crimes, and auto theft. Wiretap operator, advanced rural and urban surveillance, and also a TSA behavior detection, among other certifications that John holds. Before becoming a peace officer, he was also an outdoor adventure education supervisor for at-risk youth program at the Tulare County Office of Education. He's also worked for Levin Substance Abuse Treatment Facility in Fresno County. John served as a seasonal U.S. Forest Service wildland firefighter in the Sierra Nevada mountains. John is an honorable discharge non-commissioned officer in the U.S. and a U.S. Army veteran for the 75th Ranger Regiment and the 25th Infantry Division and the Joint Task Force Full Accounting, which was in Vietnam. He is currently a chaplain assistant with the California State Guard. My favorite, John, is an Ironman finisher, which comprised running 140 miles, and also an ultra marathon runner, husband, and a father. John has a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology in Columbia Southern University, and is a U.S. Army veteran, and as I mentioned, is a chaplain also. He's also a veteran of California Highway Patrol, having served in many specialized positions. He has almost 30 years of military and law enforcement experience. That's impressive, John. John has dedicated a vast majority of his duty and off-duty time to learning and understanding biopsychology, and has been able to create a wide spectrum of interesting and practical classes related to how our minds work, how it affects our lives and jobs. He has been involved in a deadly police combat shooting, has watched a fellow officer suffer gunshot wounds, and has witnessed the death of a fellow peace officer. John has been shot twice in the line of duty and has suffered a lasting effect. It is because of this and his past experiences, which I might say we are very fortunate to have him to present this to all of us, that he dedicated his life to employee and public safety, which we all need. So I hope all of you will join us and welcome John. We learned a lot last week, and we can't wait to hear what else you have in store for us. Well, take it away, John, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here, and we will be on our way. Screen number 2. Click on the sound button. That's important. And here we go. So I'm going to just jump right into it. This class, I hope that you're at the right one. It's 11 Principles of Leadership. And I think we're going to have a good time for the next hour. I will stick around afterwards. So even though the time will end, I'll still hang out if anybody wants to chat and ask questions or do whatever. But you also have the chat box there. I won't see it in the dialogue that I have now, but I do believe Tim will be guiding that conversation and asking those questions towards the end. So thank you, Tim, for that. I also emailed Cheryl Baldwin the 11 Principles of Leadership quick reference guide that you can print up and literally put up by your desk or at home or wherever else if you feel the need or want the notes. But this may be a note-intensive class, so I'm just going to get started right now and let you know that the concepts we're talking about today literally started. It says it's developed in 1948 by the U.S. Army, and that was Field Manual 22-10. That manual actually still exists. It's been modified a few times. I think it's 22-100 now. But there were lessons that were developed over literally hundreds or thousands of years of what did it take to get people to accomplish missions. And that's super important. And it doesn't matter if you're in the military or corporate environment or in a government agency or a non-government organization. It's the same thing. Leadership is leadership. This manual was published in 1951, and I want to share with you the 11 principles that came out of that manual that are still in use today over what we're talking almost 75 years. How bad is my math right now? All of the branches use it. And I even added recently the Department of the United States Space Force. So how cool is that? But all the departments use it, but also in the corporate environment, in the workplace, these concepts are being used because, there's a lot of veterans and a lot of leaders in organizations that happen to be veterans, and they all learn these concepts. And I think it's super important that if you are a veteran, if you did learn these, that it's a really good reminder. And if you never heard these, then it's a wonderful concept to become familiar with. Now, in becoming familiar with the concepts, it's also important to lay some foundation first and talk about a few things and maybe even define a few things. And I'm not into reading PowerPoints. That's super boring. You know how to read. But when it comes to a definition, you do need to read it. And I'll look over at my screen and define leadership first. And it's the process of influencing people by providing purpose, motivation, and direction to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. It's very interesting. Improve the organization, not just accomplish the mission. Now, I want to further define a few words that are within that definition: influencing, purpose, motivation, and direction. Because if we start to kind of think about, wow, what do I do at work and how does this work for me? Leadership becomes a little bit more, has a little bit more depth in our psyche. And by the way, if you're not in a leadership position, perhaps, you're probably still an informal leader. People are always watching you. You're senior to somebody. Somebody's watching you and learning from you and growing from your actions. So it doesn't matter what your position is. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO or the most brand new person. These concepts are still very, very important. So I think it's important to say that. So let's look at influencing, or just influence in general. The capacity to have an effect on the character, the development, or the behavior of someone. So think about that. In the definition of leadership, we're also saying that as a leader, we're developing or at least having an effect on somebody's development, an effect on their character later on as they grow and become, in their professional life, or their behavior that people are going to have. And really that falls on the shoulders of a leader many, many times because of that influence. Now, with leadership, we want to provide purpose, motivation, and direction. So let's look at purpose. Seems pretty straightforward. The reason something is done or created, for which something exists. But and a lot of us have a role at work. We know what our job is. We know what our specific job title is, and then what are the duties that are associated with that. But sometimes we don't really define that purpose very well or very specifically for each job or for the organization as a whole. And so we'll get into that. But then I think that the best way, if you think about this, is to give people purpose by providing a mission, vision, and value statement. Now, I think every organization nowadays that's a modern organization is going to have this. The problem is somebody like from HR writes it, and then everyone's like, yeah, whatever. And then it's not followed. It's not preached. It's not backed up by leaders. And I think that if leaders know the vision, mission, and values, and I even have it right on the front page of my website, so people go, okay, what is this person's vision? What do they expect in life? And then what are they actually doing? And then how are they actually doing it? And if we can provide a vision, mission, and values, that right there will provide the purpose that people need, and they'll follow it if you just give it to them. Another one is motivation. So purpose, motivation, and direction. So motivation is the ability to make somebody want to do what you know must be done. And of course, I underline want. That's the true essence. How do I make somebody want to do something? And there's a lot of different ways, but and we'll get into that. So purpose, motivation, and finally direction is basically, what's my general aim or purpose? What are we doing here? Where are we going with this job that I'm doing? Or am I just showing up to work and just kind of going through the motions? So that's a good way, I think, to start kind of laying foundation for what we're going to talk about. And of course, in a longer version of this class, even at Coupa, we'll spend lots of time talking about this and get a really good dialogue going. And sometimes some very interesting dialogue when people start talking about the leadership where they work. But look at what Theodore Hesburgh says. The very essence of leadership is that you have to have vision. And that's why I put the vision, mission, and values in there. You can't blow an uncertain trumpet. And when you have the vision, mission, and values posted somewhere and people know, okay, what are we all about? What's expected of us? You can be in a small unit within a bigger organization and still have a vision, mission, and values. And then get it approved by the chain of command and through HR and go, that's us. That's what we do. And it's not blowing an uncertain trumpet. Now we're saying this is exactly what's up and what's expected of you. Here's our values. Here's what's expected. It's a border around our behavior. And that's a lot of times that's what it's all about. It's putting that border. And once you put that border up, people go, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not flapping out there in the wind, just, nonchalantly trying to move forward. I have direction. I have structure. The manager asks how and when, and the leader asks what and why. I love this statement. When we provide purpose, motivation, and direction and true leadership, and we're influencing people in a positive way, we also break down the difference between just a simple manager and just says, hey, this is what I need done, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. And it's like, well, we're not going to learn and grow from that. But a leader says, okay, what do you want done and why? And when we ask why, that's not being, insubordinate. I'm not questioning your orders that you just gave me. I want to know more about why we're doing it so I have the full concept of what I'm doing. I mean, our teenagers should be taught to ask us why. And yet I see a lot of times, as soon as a teenager says, but why? The parent says, well, because I'm the parent, because I'm dictating what's going to happen here. And that kind of carries on into organizations. I saw it in the military. You end up seeing it in paramilitary organizations. And I think that if we can encourage our people to ask, okay, well, hold on, why are we doing that? And there's a time and a place to ask why, and there's a time and a place not to. In an emergency, we don't want to sit around and have a debate about something. But if it's a normal everyday deal and someone asks why, you got to understand they're seeking more information. And probably if you give them that information as an adult, and adult thinking starts at 13, 14 years old, the why is saying, I'm begging for more so I can give you a better product. And if we trust people and allow them and just say, this is what I want done, and then here's the why behind what I want done, then we have a lot better picture of what's going on. In fact, I'm going to show you a slide here in a moment that will really lay that out, I believe. Let me talk about, as we continue foundation here at this fast pace, by the way, types of leadership. And I want to break it down in direct, participative, and delegative. And it looks like this. Direct leadership is, I told you what to do. Don't ask any questions. Just go out there and do it. And again, there's a time and place for each one of these. This is very, very authoritative, right? And when we look at some of the effects of this, it's in times of urgency. We don't have time to debate. There's no expectation. There's no exception situation. So I don't care what your thoughts are. I don't know if you like what I'm doing or don't like what I'm doing. This is an emergency. This is what's going to happen. And a lot of times too, it's with unskilled people. They don't understand that there's other ways of doing something. You just have to essentially micromanage them and say, this is what I need you to do. Now, this is what I want you to do. That's really direct leadership. The team isn't a part of the decision-making process. And I think a byproduct of this in direct leadership is the team doesn't learn a lot, or the team member. It's just, I'm telling you what to do and you better do what I say. And they may learn because they learn through one simple process, but they don't expand and grow as a person. Now what happens though, when we go to participative leadership, something happens. So I'm going to work with you. We're going to do it together. And you may have a new person and maybe a more experienced person. And what happens now is we have this joint consultation and opinions are expressed and we go, okay. And I think as a leader in participative leadership, I have to be able to say, I have to let my ego down and say, what do you think? I mean, that's what happens when we have consultation and share opinions. And they go, well, I think maybe we should do it like that. And it's very interesting because sometimes your people will say and do things that you're like, I never thought of that. I never thought that that's something that I would have done, but that actually works. So that's pretty cool. And then we have the shared work. So now they're not doing everything and they know that once in a while, the boss will get their hands dirty, right? And the leader is not afraid to get in the trenches with the troops. I think that says a lot for a leader once in a while that's willing to get in there and sometimes just stay relevant and current. Like, how do you guys do this now? I haven't done this in 10 or 15 years. I want to play. And they're like, oh, cool, the boss wants to play and get involved. So they know how, we work and what we're doing over here. And so really we're establishing a degree of empathy. Now then something really cool happens is delegative leadership. Now I'm just going to tell you what the mission is. Hopefully as a leader, I'm going to give you the why. So you have the background of why we're doing what we're doing so that you can give me a better product. And something magical happens is this right here, this word, trust. And when we start trusting our people to do it their way, and it might be your way that you taught them, or they might go and they might kind of veer off and do it their own way. Something pretty cool happens. They really start to learn. I mean, it truly, delegative leadership teaches our people. It also motivates the team to say, they go, wow, I have control over this. This is my mission. I have ownership on this responsible moment. And I can do something with that. And that makes me feel like I have self-worth. And that's really good. It also means, though, that we have a skilled team that I can trust and go out there and handle business. And the more delegative leadership that we use, the more skilled our team becomes. Again, it takes a lot of trust. And it's hard sometimes because they may do it completely different than we thought of doing it. But I'll tell you, if you let your people do what they're going to do in a delegative leadership environment, as long as they're not breaking any rules, breaking any policies, getting hurt, as long as they're doing it safe. And that's where supervision and management comes in. We're just watching from a distance saying, okay, wow, they're doing it. And I'm trusting them. Sometimes the missions dictate that the leader has to come in and just say, okay, hold on, we have a tight time frame on this. I have a very specific and very refined vision on this particular mission. And this is how we're going to do it step by step. And there's a time and place for that. But there's other times when that delegated leadership can really make your people do amazing things. And it really makes them capable of working on their own. So with that and kind of laying a little bit of a foundation now, and you can kind of get the tone now for what's going on here, let's talk about the actual 11 principles of leadership that if you haven't received it already, you'll get the quick reference guide from Cheryl and she'll send that to you. And the first one is know your self and seek self-improvement. And I was just telling them before the Zoom started that, I memorized these back in 1997 before I went to the sergeant's board for the Army for my first non-commissioned officer rank. And I've been learning, relearning, and reminding myself of these ever since. I'll recite these. I'm weird, I guess. I'll be out on a run and I'll just recite the 11 principles of leadership. And it even works at home. When I'm at home with my boys, I was saying earlier, my son just got elected to student body president for 2020 at Golden Sierra High School here in El Dorado County. And I have to stop myself and go, am I doing the right thing? Because this kid's watching me and he's going to act. There's going to be elements of me that he's going to act like in his own behavior. And if he's a jerk out there and does something, is that my fault? And how much do I have to play in that? And so anyway, it doesn't matter, what your organization is or what your role is. These 11 principles I'm about to show you right now have something to do with just all walks of life. So anyway, know yourself and seek self-improvement. And really, who am I? What am I capable of? What are my shortcomings? What am I not good at? And so what do I need to work on? What's my education level and how could I get better at that? If I picked up my computer and turned it and showed you my library right here, there's tons of books on a lot of biopsychology, a lot of leadership, a lot of body language, because I'm big into that. And I'm always kind of pushing, like, what am I missing? What's that one question someone's going to ask me in a class, and I'm not going to know the answer. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. You go to my website and it says the best body language available in North America. But what happens then when someone asks me a body language class and I don't know, and that's supposed to be my cup of tea? So I always ask myself, what am I missing here? How can I be better? And how can I better educate myself? And that's what you have to do. You have to figure out as a leader where you can be better. So self-improvement is huge. I love quotes, and so I threw a lot of them in this to back up every single one of these points. And John F. Kennedy said, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And it's true, you can never stop learning as a leader or as a professional, because as soon as you do, to me, especially if you're in a dangerous job, then you become dangerous because you're not staying up with the times and the education that it takes to do your job. Number 2, be technically and tactically proficient. This sounds very military. And I found a wonderful quote that just blows the whole, oh, that's a military concept. I don't have to worry about that. Being technically and tactically proficient. Well, listen, tactical means mission. So if something's tactical, it's mission oriented. And so your technical competence and your mission oriented competence is very, very important. What does that mean? How do I do my job? And then how do I do my job out in the field? Do I know how to all the little aspects of my job? And then do I know when and how to employ that job? And so here's the great quote from Steve Weiskircher. If I butchered that, I'm sorry. But being technically proficient is having the skills required to perform your job. Great. But being tactically proficient means that you know when and how to employ them to accomplish the mission. I mean, this is a civilian that's quoting in so many words exactly what I just said. And this comes right out of the military handbook. And yet he's applying it to his normal civilian job. And that's an amazing quote to me. It's just every day there's an airplane going by. I don't know if you guys hear that. One of those mornings. Why is an airplane out here in the country flying so low to my house? Who knows? Nope, it's a helicopter. There's a helicopter hovering above my house during my Zoom. So being technically proficient, those skills, a lot of people have. I mean, there's a lot of people that are book smart, but then they're not field oriented smart. And so as a leader, we've got to understand, okay, how do I get that orientation to when and how to employ my people? That's part of knowing yourself and seeking self-improvement. All right, number 3, seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. And again, as a leader, we want to say, hey, pick me, put me in that position so that I can lead this mission or take over that project or whatever it happens to be. I want to be the one to blame. Now, that's a hard thing to do for a leader or just a regular person. It kind of goes against our nature. I don't want to be the one that's going to get blamed if this thing doesn't work out well. But every time we take on that challenge, and we take on a challenge, we get better. And that's part of also seeking self-improvement. And so then when it doesn't go well, we take responsibility for what didn't go well. And you learn way more from failing and messing up than you ever will from being perfect every time. So go out there, put yourself in those positions where someone's going to point the finger at you. And realize that every time someone points a finger at you and you get better and hopefully don't repeat the same mistake twice, you're becoming a really, really good skilled worker and a better leader in the future. You're gaining experience, and don't be afraid of making mistakes, because it's the people that have never made a mistake that end up really, truly not being that good of a leader. It's the people that have been in the trenches and gotten dirty and it's just had a hard time and really came out the other end with a great attitude that I want to stand up and work for. The reason people blame things on previous generations is because there's only one other choice. And generations could be the last chain of command. This leader left, now there's a new manager in, and now the new manager's saying, oh, well, everything's up in arms and nothing works right and everything's terrible. It's because of the last leader. Well, guess what? You're the leader now. So what are you going to do about it? Don't blame the last person that was in that position. Don't blame the last generation. Blame yourself. In other words, seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. I like this from Eleanor Roosevelt. In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. And the process never ends until we die. I mean, she took it all the way to the end. And the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility. I mean, how can you have a better quote for seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions? And she's saying that this goes on until your last moment of life. And that's a pretty amazing quote to me. Number 4 is make sound and timely decisions. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's something called paralysis by analysis. And a leader will have to make a decision, and they'll sit and analyze it and debate over it and just carry on and just chew on this thing forever and ever and ever. Will never tell anybody, like, well, hey, like, what are we going to do with this situation? And that's why I put that picture there. I kind of morphed a few things together there, where you put a clock in there and you make people think, wow, how much time do I take to make a decision while other people down the chain of command are waiting on me to make a choice? And sometimes, and we see it, right? We see it in government all the time. We see it in legislation, this paralysis through analysis. And really the military was saying, listen, just make a decision. Just make sure that that decision is sound. It doesn't always have to be the right decision. And that's why we seek responsibility, and then we take responsibility for our actions. The decision might be the wrong one, but make a decision, and then we'll learn from it. And as long as we don't, severely violate a policy or put someone in jeopardy, with their health or their physical well-being, just go for it. So what if you fail? So what if it was the wrong decision? Then great, we learn. It's like getting your degree. We make a thesis, and what happens? You either prove it or you disprove it. But we learn something along the way from both. So you set out to put a thesis. If you prove it, hey, great. And we go, yeah, I came up with something new. But we have to realize that all of those disproven theses that didn't work out, and you're like, oh, we were wrong. That wasn't, that was a bad statement. So now we know about the good and the bad. And if we treat our decisions the same way, I think that we can get a lot more efficient at making decisions, and they do become more sound and they do become more timely because we're not afraid to make a decision. A leader who doesn't hesitate. So this is the opposite of what I just told you. And I found this quote and I thought it was important, though. This is when it comes to safety. A leader who doesn't hesitate before they send their nation into battle is not fit to be a leader. But why Golden Mare is saying hesitate, how long? Because now you have, in this case, it's a country that's being invaded, and they say, listen, are we going to sit around and wait and just let our people get invaded, or are we going to act rationally and say and hurry up and just counter react? And it's like, no, there's a balance. But then we have Michelle Obama saying, well, then let me show the other side of the coin. You can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. In other words, you can't cause yourself to be paralyzed by the fear of making a decision. If we do that, we create an environment of analysis and paralysis. So we see kind of both sides of the coin there, and there is a balance. But I think if fear takes over, we'll never make a decision. And so don't be afraid to make a decision in general. Number 5 is set the example. Gosh, this one is huge. And this is at home with your kids. This is you at work. You as a leader, no matter what you think, okay? And this is a great quote. Your words may fall on deaf ears, but you are always being observed. They're always watching you, period. It doesn't matter. Remember, the beginning, you're influencing people. You are influencing their character, their behaviors, their actions at work. And so be a role model. Set the example, and whatever that is, how you speak, how you act, how fast it takes you to make a decision, because you're teaching your subordinates to, if you're afraid to make a decision, then you're teaching them to be afraid to make a decision. So that's super important. Leadership cannot really be taught. It can only be learned. So I put that quote from Harold Janine because, again, you can't teach someone to be a leader. They're watching you and becoming a leader based on your actions because you're influencing them. So even this is 11 principles of leadership. They're just principles. I'm not teaching you to be a leader. I'm giving you some concepts that you can use in your own personal way, in your own personal life, and in your job to go in and try to enhance the leader that you are, formal or informal. So remember, leadership can't be really taught. It can only be learned. And most of the time we watch it, or we learn it through emulation, right? We're emulating somebody else. And sometimes we distill it, right? We take the good and we try to enhance that and be that leader. And then we take the bad and we try to go, okay, well, that's stuff that I'm not going to do, but I'm still going to learn from that. Number 6, know your subordinates and look out for their well-being. Super important, right? Basically, it's saying take care of your people. I mean, always take care of your people. That is your job as a leader, because if you take care of your people, they will take care of you. They're the ones who are going to accomplish the mission. All you're doing is putting out the orders at whatever level you're at. Let them do it, right? And the best way we can let them do it is by taking care of them. I mean, look at this quote right here. The secret to success is good leadership. And good leadership is all about making the lives of your team members or workers better. I think Paul Dungy says it perfect, right? You take care of them and they'll take care of you, and they will accomplish the mission. And there's something else in this quote that I want to say, though, is it says making the lives. It doesn't say making their job or making their position better. It's making their life better. So there's a lot more to leadership than just mission accomplishment. Part of mission accomplishment is taking care of people. In the military, we call it soldier care. Soldier care isn't just I'm caring for you while you're accomplishing this mission. It's I'm making sure that your finances are good, and that your home life is okay, and that your mental well-being is okay, and that your health is okay. I mean, in the military as an NCO, you got an 18-year-old that doesn't know a whole lot about the world, and you're teaching them everything. Well, sometimes if we take that concept and we put it at work and we sit down with someone and go, how's everything going? And you don't have to get into all their personal, how's your finances? But if they do have an issue and they're down and they're stressed out at work, and you end up saying, what's going on? Talk to me. I care. It matters. You can take these life experiences that you have, and if it is a financial issue, you can go, okay, I can empathize with that. I've been there before. Let me get you some help. And that's where EAP comes in, right? Our employee assistance programs. And where we get familiar with EAP and we know what it's like to call that number and pick up the phone, even if you just do it to test the system and see what it's like, to see what happens when someone answers on the other side of that 1-800 number. You pick up the phone and you call, you go on the EAP website and you look at the supervisor handbooks that are available through all the different organizations like Magellan that provide these services. And you get familiar with it. How can I be a better caretaker of the people that work for me? That's a leader. That's what a leader does. Anyway, I don't want to geek out too much, or I'll be here for 2 hours, right? Number 7, keep your subordinates informed. Okay, this is huge. This is where you, as a leader, you got to communicate what's going on. You got to give people the vision, mission, and values, set their behavioral standards, tell them the whys behind what they're doing. I mean, look at this right here. George Bernard Shaw says the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. A lot of times we say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we just leave it at that, and then we just kind of hope it gets done, and then it doesn't. And now we're kind of piecemealing different issues together instead of sitting down and giving the entire mission and the vision behind it and the values that are expected from that mission. But there's something else that happens too, is this. I want you to imagine that as a leader, and I've mentioned this before in communication de-escalation, as a leader, let's say that you text one of your people and say, hey, you text me, you say, hey, come back to the office. We need to chat about something. And that's all you say. And it could be something totally innocuous, right? I guarantee you that none of your employees, nor you, when you've got that text or something similar to it, did a U-turn in your car and was headed back to the office and said, sweet, this is the best day ever. I'm about to get an award. They finally are going to recognize me. It's on. Nobody says that. And why is that? Predictability, when predictability is down, when we don't know the whys and the hows and the whats, when predictability is down and we don't know what's going to happen next, or metaphorically, when we're looking into a dark room, then our stress goes up. And of course, I label that as physiology because everything starts happening in the body. When our stress goes up, our thinking goes down, our cognition, and we start thinking worst case scenario. And that's a survival technique that all humans have. When I look into a dark room that I don't know what's inside that space, I want nothing more than to turn on a light bulb and look around inside that space and see what's going on so that I have predictability. Same thing, when I get that phone call from somebody, I get that email from someone, I get that letter in the mail, when the doctor says this or that, or when I'm in some situation I'm not familiar with, when predictability is low, my stress goes up, my rational, normal thinking goes down, and I start having emotional thinking that's very survival-based. So we think worst case scenario, so I'll be prepared for the worst. And then that's when we start making mistakes. My boss texts me and says, hey, can you come back to the office? We need to have a conversation about something. And then all of a sudden I go, oh my God, what did I do wrong? What did I say? What did I do? What did I fail? That's my instinct kicking in, my emotional instinct. And you might even think you might know what it is. Like, oh, it's that one thing. I'm going to go in there. Okay, now let me start defending myself as I'm driving back to the office, and I'm going to be ready for war when I get back. And then you finally get into the office and you have this attitude, right? The wrong attitude. Maybe they just want to say, hey, I've been calling everybody in one at a time today, and I just want to check in on you and see how things are going. And you're like, oh, bull crap. What do you really want? And that's obviously that's a mistaken thinking. We're stressing ourselves out for absolutely no reason. We have an adversarial attitude, and this is just one example I'm trying to give you here. As a leader, if you're putting people in that position, it doesn't matter if it's a text and telling them to come back to the office, or you're giving them a mission without a lot of background. If you're not providing predictability, you're making your people stressed out. You're not providing them with the right cognition, right? The right brain, the right method that their brain should be operating on. And then they're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes in their attitude, how they talk, how they react, the decisions that they make. And so this is what I call the info void, and this is the effect of it. So as a leader, communicate. And if you communicate with your people, then there won't be an info void. And really the vaccination, if you will, the antidote for this screen right here and these arrows is predictability. So if we try to create a very predictable atmosphere at work, your people are going to be a lot less stressed out and they're going to make a lot less mistakes. So communication obviously is huge. But check this out. Charles Dickens said this. This is amazing, even way back then. And of course, this is hypocritical because we're on here on electronic medium and we're on Zoom. However, electronic communication will never be a substitute for the face of someone who with their soul encourages another person to be brave and true. And in this particular situation, he was on a ship, and I believe the ship was going down in a storm, and it was a telegram or a telegraph, and they were using some sort of telegraph method. And he's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, the ship's getting ready to go down and something bad's about to happen, and you're going to try to communicate with me using the telegraph? I want to see a human." I mean, can you imagine if Charles Dickens knew about smartphones and texting and emails and how much communication happens on a daily basis? And so the reason I put this in here, in fact, with the National Environmental Health Association, I did a quite a lengthy analysis and write-up on this very quote with the background behind it and what it meant to me. And here's what it means. You can communicate very easily and very efficiently with text, but potentially. But there's sometimes that we need to sit down with everybody and not send that email, not send that text, and say, let's have a get together. Let's have a human interaction here. I think it's super, super important. Charles Dickens thought it was important. I think it's important now. I do think, though, that we're doing absolutely incredibly awesome, that we're overcoming COVID and we're using tools like we are today. So I'm not discounting, I'm not saying electronic communication is bad. I'm just saying, as a leader, whenever you can, try to get the face-to-face in, right? Or skip, try to move it up on level. So instead of texting, after 2 or 3 texts, just go, let's switch to a phone call here. Let's switch from the email to a phone call. Let's switch from these emails or phone calls to a personal meeting. Let's sit down and really get some communication done, because we miss a lot. You miss a lot on a text. You miss a lot on an email. We actually, believe it or not, miss a lot on a Zoom. It's just the way it is. But we're doing our best with what we have right now. So thank goodness that we do have this electronic medium. Number 8 is develop a sense of responsibility in your subordinates. We already talked about seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions, but that's you as a leader. So how do you develop leaders, future leaders, and better employees? You give them the opportunity to take responsibility for situations. And this is where delegation and leadership comes in play. You say, listen, I'm giving this mission to you, and they're going to be scared. We're all scared of something we've never done before. That's with the predictability model, right? I don't know. I don't have any predictability for that. I'm not familiar with that. And so, yeah, I'm going to be stressed out. But every single time in your life, when you went through that storm, and we all go through storms, and there's a lot of us going through storms right now. But haven't you ever noticed that after the storm was over, you look back and you go, that wasn't that bad. Okay, I got through it. And just like with leadership, when you give someone a mission and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that, or I'm afraid, or I'm nervous about it. But afterwards, they look back through that storm they were in and they go, that wasn't that bad. And now I have the experience. That's another tool I can put in my box that I can use for the future. And sometimes people will say, thank you, thank you for putting me through that. And then you just go, hey, the only reason I did is because I trusted you, because I know you're super capable and you did an awesome job. Did you make some mistakes? Yeah, sure. But your attitude is way overrides any mistake that you ever had. And we can put people in those situations to motivate them. So developing responsibility, to me, is handing them the key to overcoming the lack of predictability and the stress and the fear that comes with taking responsibility. And you as a leader can do that for people. Check this quote out by George Patton, right? We all know who that is. Never tell people how to do things. Instead, tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. That right there, that quote, that takes trust in your people. And imagine you're the general, right, of all the American forces in Europe, and you have to trust people. You have the mission, you go forth and do it. And instead of micromanaging them and saying, this is exactly what I want you to do every which way. I mean, a general can't do that. They're commanding thousands and thousands of troops. And so they have to, intrinsically, right, they have to trust their people, their leaders. And each leader down the chain of command, all the way down to the smallest fire team of 3 people, has to trust the people around them, especially when it comes to delegation and accomplishing those missions. But it's super cool that when we stop saying how to do it and we just tell them why we want it done and what the mission is, so it's the why and the what, not the how, that they will surprise you with their ingenuity. Super cool. Sorry. All employees, and Eric Harvey says this one, all employees deserve to be treated as responsible adults. So think about that. Give me the responsibility. Even if they are not, maybe, how would I say this? Maybe if they're not exhibiting that responsibility level, they still deserve to be treated as such. And that's super important. Even with my teams, I treat them like young adults. And when they're not acting like young adults, I'll remind them that they're not acting like young adults or adults. I go, well, in this case, I think that you're kind of acting a little bit immature and maybe like a child, but I'm still going to give you the responsibility and see how you do. All employees deserve to be treated as responsible adults if that is the behavior that we expect of them. And that's what you'll get. If you start treating people a certain way, they will respond that way. And if we micromanage them and tell them every little tiny thing to do along the way, then they're never going to expand on their, they're never going to go out on their own and do something. And you're like, come on, guys, seriously, like I got to do everything for you. And their answer should be, well, yeah, that's what you taught us to do. And again, let's say you're firing up a new unit, you're building a new unit, and it's, and you have the vision and you're being entrusted by somebody else to do it. Yeah. Is there a time where you may have to lay everything out step by step by step? Yeah, sure. But then that should fade from direct leadership into participative. And then finally, when you build that trust and okay, everything's working the way that we want it to, or that my vision has succeeded and the machine is moving now, it's time to start delegating and trusting. And or even moving on and just go, I have to let it go, and I have to let now that machine work on and run on its own, and trust the people and trust the changes that future employees in either your position or that will come into the unit will make, and just trust that it's for the better. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes. That's an ego issue that all people will naturally have. Number 9, ensure the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. And all 3 of those things have to happen. Well, in being understood, that means putting out the mission and, again, telling them what you want done and the why. That's truly how we make somebody understand. Then supervising is just making sure it gets done. It doesn't mean we're lording over our people and micromanaging them along the entire process. You're just kind of peeking and going, okay, they're still doing well. Or you're readily available in case in this delegative environment that they have questions. Or in a participative leadership environment that you're teaching along the way to develop an environment of future trust and delegation. So that's supervised. And then finally, accomplish. Make sure it actually gets done and hold everyone accountable for what happens and accountable for the results of accomplishing the mission. I'll get into that in a moment here. It's all about mission accomplishment and making sure it happens. And of course, as a leader, ensuring that the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. That's how we check that block. Supervision is an opportunity to bring someone back to their own mind, to show them how good they can be. Nancy Klein says this, and here's what I mean, and I think she means, and this is how I take it, at least in the context of this class today, is that if I actually properly supervise somebody, especially in a delegative leadership environment, I'm showing them what they're capable of. I'm showing them right here, like it says, how good they can actually be. And they go, wow, I did that. Like my boss let me do that. And that's an amazing thing. People become super motivated when they're actually trusted as adults and trusted as responsible adults instead of being micromanaged. Look at this one from John Wooden. A leader must listen to those under their supervision. You think it would go the opposite direction. A leader must listen to those people above them, to learn and develop. No, he's saying, listen, you got to listen to the people, your subordinates. You got to listen and see what they're saying, because they're in the trenches. They're the one doing the job. I'm going to say, hey, boss, this isn't working out for me. Like, I don't like the way we're doing this. You can't go, well, I don't care. Your ego gets stuck and you go, I don't care, because that's what I put out, and I've been doing this for 20 years and I know what I'm talking about. Well, guess what? Times do change. procedures can change. And there are people out there, I know this might be a hard cookie for some people to swallow, but there are people out there that are smarter than you, that are more efficient than you, that might know your job better than you do, that might end up being a better leader than you. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay, because it's about the organization, not our own ego. And we got to get past that sometimes. This right here, a lot of people, I'll say this in front of a crowd, and this will get a big reaction. Well, people will be like, see that? I wish my boss needs to hear this quote right now. And I'm like, well, it's true, and it's hard. And so in a leadership class, I think this is a very important quote to put in there, that, listen, you got to hear your people. You got to listen to them. You got to empathize. Not just, okay, I heard you. Yeah, duly noted. No, listen to them and prove it to them. Maybe by making changes when appropriate, or maybe expressing that you heard everything they said and say, okay, I'm going to look into it. Let me see how we can make some adjustments to what we're doing, because you guys are the ones doing the work. And if you think it's a better change, then let me help you do your job better. Number 10 out of 11, build the team. And there's people get degrees on this right here, this leadership concept, just right here. And I think that building the team can be wildly complex. And so you have to look at your team, no matter how small or how big it is, and go, how do I build that team up? I think a good resource that you can use is Lencioni's book. In fact, I have it right here from Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Really not showing up right there. And the dysfunctions are right here. The absence of trust. And that's probably the biggest one, because he puts it at the bottom, and it's really the base of the pyramid. If we don't have trust, and you've heard me mention trust already several times, trusting your people through delegation, and allowing them to do their job. But amongst the team, though, and the peers too, if there's no trust, then we have an issue there. And a lot of times, if we go back to taking care of our people and ensuring that their needs are met, that also builds trust. And learning our people and what makes them tick is something that will help you build trust. The next one is the fear of conflict, not being afraid to walk up to someone and go, hey. And by the way, what I'm about to tell you builds trust. Walking up to an employee and going, that right there, that's not how we do that, or you did that wrong, or you screwed that up, or however you say it, with tact, a keen sense of what to say or do so as not to offend others. But telling someone they didn't do something right builds trust, because then they know, okay, if I don't do something right, my leader is going to help me out by putting me back on the right track. Some of the best leaders I've ever had were what I would consider hardline leaders. And of course, hardline leaders aren't for everybody, but for me, it worked out well, because if I screwed up, they were very quick to correct me, tell me I was all screwed up, but then something magical, they didn't hold a grudge. They just let it go. And I was like, cool, I can trust that leader, that if I go off track just for a second, they're going to put me back on track. And that's helping me. That's teaching me. And really that is building a lot of trust in my leader. The next one is lack of commitment. And I'm going to just say this, am I committed to my vision, mission, and values? Do I prove that? Do I write it down? Do I know it? And then do I actually express that? There's a lot of different ways that we can go with lack of commitment. But I think that the vision, mission, and values, expressing that mission and understanding what we do and proving it to everybody. There's nothing wrong with taking your vision, mission, and values, or even the quick reference guide for 11 principles of leadership that you're going to get from Cheryl. There's nothing wrong with signing that thing in a nice, thick blue marker and dating it and going, put it on the wall and go, there it is, everybody. And like with fear of conflict, don't be afraid to walk up to me and go, hey boss, I just don't feel like you're doing that one right here. I want to chat. I mean, can you imagine an environment where one of your people could walk up and tell you that they don't think that you're doing something that you promised, and they're comfortable enough to do that? That's trust. That's not having fear of conflict. And then that's showing commitment. Okay, well, I'm committed to my vision, mission, and values. I'm committed to the 11 principles of leadership. The next is avoidance of accountability. And you heard that in the 11 principles of leadership. Seek responsibility, take responsibility for your actions, develop a sense of responsibility in your subordinates. That's accountability. That's what responsibility is. And when someone avoids that accountability, I'm taking this position, I'm the new boss here, but listen, everybody, don't do anything, don't make any waves. Let's just keep everything going nice and quiet the way it is. And then I'll be out of here soon enough, and I'll move on to my next position because I'm trying to, go up this pyramid or up this ladder. Well, that's a complete avoidance of accountability, because you're afraid to move forward and progress and be a progressive leader or even a disruptive leader. We've got to be okay with being accountable. And then the last one is inattention to results. In other words, we accomplished the mission, but what does it look like? What's our grade here? Let's look at ourselves critically and say, how did we do and how can we do better at this in the future? I think that's super important. Moving on. Last but not least, but there's still stuff to cover here in the last 10 minutes. Employ your unit in accordance with its capability. And you could call it team or group or whatever your unit is, but this seems like a very obvious for the military. Employ your unit in accordance with its capabilities. You don't send somebody out into the field to go accomplish a mission and conduct some sort of tactic that they're not trained or equipped to do. But if we think of that in the same way as our own people, am I giving my subordinates a mission? Am I delegating even something to them that they're not really equipped to do? And how do I know if they're equipped? Well, look at this. Here's how I define the capabilities of my team. First is their attitude. And how do I develop their attitude? How do I know that their attitude is going to be developed properly and equipped to do the job? They got to know why. If my people know why they're doing what they're doing, then their attitude will be in the right place. Then their skills. So we have the why. The skills is knowing how to do something. Have I taught them how to do that thing? And sometimes, I may give them a mission that they'll probably fail at, but I do it on purpose. I want them to fail forward, right? I want them to experience that. It's probably something fairly innocuous. You're not going to violate a policy or safety. And I'll say, go out there and just wreck it. I don't go for it. Just see what happens. Sometimes you'll be like, holy moly, I can't believe they accomplished that, first of all. And they did it something completely different the way I would have done it. Or sometimes they completely fail. And then you get to come in and go, okay, guys, let's lay it all out. Let's see what happened. And let me show you how to accomplish that properly so that you're successful next time. And they're like, wow, cool. We learned something. Awesome. Yay. And then knowledge. So we have the why, we have the how, and of course, knowledge is the what. As a leader, if you don't give your people the what and then the how to do it, and then here's why we do it, I think that you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting your team up for failure. And if they don't have all three of those, then we're not employing our unit in accordance with its capabilities. So those are the 11 principles of leadership. You'll get an email from Cheryl. It'll have them all on there. And then you'll have a few more notes, a definition of leadership and some of those things to think about. These are not on the form, okay? So, because I don't want your people walking up going, hey, boss, I think you're doing that right there. No, I want it to be constructive, right? You can be constructive with criticism, but we don't want to give them the criticism and go, there's the one I'm talking about. But on this class today, I do want to provide it. And the first one for poor leadership is poor integrity. And that can mean a lot of different things in how we do our job and how we interact with our people. But do people trust you? I've already mentioned trust a million times. So poor integrity really is the foundation of trust. Lack of adaptability. This happens now. I mean, think about this year, right? This past 12 months. If you weren't adaptable, you'd fail. Even me as a public speaker, I had a conversation with my wife and I was telling her, I'm like, I don't want to do Zooms. I don't want to get on this computer and I'm a live speaker. I want to go and talk to people. Well, guess what? I had to adapt. And if I hadn't adapted, then I would have hurt myself, I think, professionally. Big time. And so we have to learn to adapt. We have to take on new challenges. But again, those new challenges represent a lack of predictability, stress, the wrong type of thinking, and then the mistakes. And in my case, the stress of not knowing how to do Zoom and what it would be like to talk to you guys caused me to make the mistakes based upon my attitude, my thinking of not taking on classes when I could have. And when I finally, my wife convinced me, she's like, you're dumb. You need to learn how to do Zoom and watch YouTubes and do whatever and join the crowd because this is it. This is what we're doing. And now I kind of like it. It's a lot of fun. And I'm like, huh. So I went through the storm. I looked back. I adapted. And if I couldn't do that, I would fail. All right. Little vision for the future. So not being progressive, like what does the future look like? And we see this a lot, right, in government where we may have leaders that are just like, hey, let's not make any waves. Let's not be progressive. Let's not be disruptive. And they have, I think, a poor vision for the future. And I'll tell you, in our vision, mission, and values, the vision should be, part of that should be the future. This is what we're looking forward to. That's what's out there in the future. If you don't do it, you really do fail. Lack of accountability, we already mentioned that even from Lencioni, right, in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, but we have to be accountable. And we talked about that through the 11 principles of leadership, so I won't beat that one too bad. Poor communication skills, I also, I think, covered that pretty well. We have to be able to communicate, and if we don't, we're failing. We're failing our people. But remember, also, what are we communicating? the what's, the how's, and the why's. Those are super important. I want to show you a video. It's 5 minutes, and it'll take us up to 10 o'clock, and then we'll just open it up for questions. And I'm wondering if I'm over time or not, but I'm just going to go for it. Okay, here we go.
I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Scott Williams, and I want to take a few moments to talk to you today about how it is that I manage my staff. And let me tell you, the simple answer to how I manage my staff is this: I don't. I don't manage my staff, I lead my staff. There's been this ongoing debate, ongoing argument over managers versus leaders and what particular category that people may fall into. And so I'm telling you, after reading countless books and being in a number of different leadership roles in both nonprofit organizations, corporations, and I worked in politics and in ministry, I'm telling you, I've definitely witnessed the difference between the two. And I had the opportunity as a young leader to work for, a gentleman who was a great leader. He was the consummate leader, and his name was Marvin Weidman. He taught me some of the best leadership principles, and I really summed it up to this acronym that I call BECK. And he, again, was the consummate leader. And so as I'm sitting here thinking about Marvin, what he did, the B for BECK, it's B-E-C-C, but the B was believe. He always believed in me. He believed in me. He believed in others. And I'm telling you, the E was he encouraged me. He encouraged me to be more, to do more. He was always an encourager. The C is he challenged me. He challenged me to dream big, to think bigger, to do more. He challenged me spiritually, he challenged me professionally. And the last C, probably the most important, is he corrected me. If I got a little bit off balance, he always would correct me and bring me back in line. And I'm going to tell you, as we look at leaders and managers, both have their role. But in their simplest form, here's the deal. Leaders develop followers, and managers manage people and things. And so leaders don't have subordinates because they're in the business, again, of developing followers. They're in the business of developing other leaders. Where managers, on the other hand, they have to have subordinates. It's all about positional equity and telling subordinate Joe or subordinate Sally to go make this widget and make it in this way. A leader, on the other hand, they're not worried about some positional equity or some formal authority because they know that they're in the business of creating a tribe and developing more leaders. And what we have to understand is that the business of following, it's voluntary. It's a voluntary action. And a lot of times, managers don't even realize this. And so the challenge for most managers, they don't realize that they're managing. They're confusing managing with leadership. And so I'm going to help us to look at these 10 simple category principles and category comparisons that will compare the difference between a manager and a leader. And so the first thing, when it comes to essence, the essence of all of this, managers, they're all about stability. Where a leader, on the other hand, they're all about change. When it comes to rules, managers make the rules, leaders, they break the rules, for the sake of their organization, for the sake of what they're leading. When it comes to approach, it's all about, for managers, all about planning the details. Where a leader, it's about setting the direction. This is where we're going. And when it comes to culture, managers, they execute. And where leaders, they shape the culture. When it comes to conflict, managers oftentimes avoid conflict. Where leaders, they use conflict as an asset because they understand that there's no movement without friction. When it comes to direction, managers like to go down the existing road. I'm going to go this way. This is comfortable. Where leaders, they like to go down new roads. When it comes to credit, managers tend to take credit. Where leaders, they give credit to all those around, those who are making it happen. When it comes to decisions, managers makes the decisions. Where leaders would generally facilitate the decision. They will encourage and create buy-in in a healthy way. When it comes to vision, managers tell and leaders, they sell. They sell the vision and direction. And this one is really important, the last one, number 10. When it comes to style, managers are generally transactional. What are the transactions to get this from there? Where leaders, it's about being transformational, transforming people, transforming an organization, transforming a culture. Let me tell you, a great self-assessment for you to determine whether or not you're leading or you're managing is to ask this question. And the question is this: if my position, title, role, or formal authority were removed, would the people that I'm leading still gladly follow me? If you can't answer that question honestly, ask those that are the closest to you to give you a candid answer. Because the reality is that people don't want to be managed. They want to be led. They want to follow a leader. I mean, think about it. You're sitting there right now. You're listening to people. You don't get excited about following world managers. You don't get excited about following business manager, education manager, religious managers. But you do get excited about following world leaders and business leaders and education leaders and religious leaders. Managers change things. Leaders change the world. I'm telling you this, I remember this quote from an Apple commercial. It was a campaign they did in the 1990s, a Think Different campaign. It featured MLK and Picasso and Gandhi and Einstein and others. And the commercial ended with this line. It said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do." Be a world changer. Be a leader.
Well, Tim, you want to open it up for some questions?
Yes, thank you. We are asked if you can share the link to that video, possibly in the chat. People are curious about that.
Yeah, what I'll do is actually I'll send it to Cheryl, and she can, if she hasn't sent out that email yet, I'll send another email to her with that email.
Okay.
And maybe even some others. I don't know. That depends on, yeah.
Thank you. We have a few questions. One is, how do you deal with unmotivated employees and coworkers? The person goes on to say, it tends to wear me out, and I would love to be in a leadership position, but I don't know if I could handle employees like this.
Yeah, well, that comes down to employee care. I think a lot of times when someone's not motivated, there's a reason why, right? And we have to find the reason why. And that starts with sitting down and taking care of people and making sure all their needs are met at work so that they're motivated to even be there in the first place. And then making sure that that person's psychological needs, right, their emotional needs are being met. A lot of times, if we start adding the hows and the whats and the whys, the motivation will come. Because remember, motivation is the ability to make somebody want to do what you know must be done. So how do I create the want? Well, a lot of times in adults, if we know the why, don't just tell me what to do, but tell me why I'm doing it. Whether I like it or not, I'll still go do it. And I'll actually give you a better product if I know why, the concept behind what's going on, because now I'm part of I'm part of what's happening here. I'm not just being told what to do and I'm just working for you.
Right. Oh, thank you. On item 7, communication, as leader, I think I've often communicated well to my staff and to people, but they still, I get the feedback that they still don't feel like they're informed. And it's kind of a weird thing. Like, I feel like I'm doing all this communication, yet it's not getting through or something. So how can I do some feedback loops to make sure that I am actually communicating?
So there's 2 ways. One is making sure you're not over communicating. And the way we do that is we can structurize what we're telling our people, right? And we can tell them, here's the what, here's the how that we need it done, and then here's the why. And maybe they have an element that they do on their own for that, maybe they don't, but at least give it all to them. Maybe they decide on, maybe the how, right? You say, you guys decide how you're going to do it, but here's the what and the why. And then you throw it out there, and they're quote informed, right? But then the feedback part, what you said, is we call that in military world is a brief back. So as you're talking to everybody, say, okay, does everybody get what they need? Because instead of them coming to you an hour or a day or a week later going, well, you didn't tell me and I didn't have enough information. We find out right then and there when you're putting the information out with a brief back. Okay, so tell me, what do you need and what are you going to do and why are you going to do it? And then they'll tell you back and you go, oh, no, hold on. You're off scale right there. Let's get you back on the track. That was wrong. Or you don't want to say that word, but that wasn't exactly what the mission is. Let me put you back on track. And they're like, oh, and then you see the light bulb turn on above their head. So nice. A brief back is a good way, and then don't over communicate, but really get some good structure in it. So they have a good expectation and a high level of predictability whenever you come to them with a mission. And if you can just tell yourself, give the how, the what, and the why, I think you'll be good.
Nice.
Or better.
As far as item number 8 in your list of 11, developing a sense of responsibility in my subordinates, I'm thinking about, my goal has always been for my staff to take on a project like a business owner, would take on something in their own business of actual ownership. And I, as much as I want them to own it, sometimes they don't own it. And right. I'm just curious about how to make that transition of an assignment to really them embracing it and owning it.
Yeah, I think that one, yeah, because we also look at Lencioni's dysfunction of a team, and at the very top, it's that that accountability and the grade that we're getting for what we're doing, and a lot of times too, maybe they don't own it because they're scared. Maybe they don't own it because they're not properly motivated and they don't know the why. So we have to figure out, and this is reactive as a leader. Is I put out a mission, and this is my result, and I didn't really get what I thought I would get. So maybe your expectations weren't clearly put out there. Maybe they were, and they just didn't get it because of a good brief back. But we have to grade that and look at it, and we have to ask ourselves as a leader, what did I not do to motivate that person properly? And then I need to go to and use employee care and go, okay, what makes this particular employee tick, and what would make them motivated? And you can just straight up ask them, like, what would make you, take ownership of this and be a lot better and think, you know what, this is mine. And they might go, nothing, I don't like that job. And you're like, okay, because you're going to get that, right?
Yeah.
Some people there's certain things that we as people just don't like to do. And so now you got to know the team, the whole team, and go, okay, well, in the future, to take care of you, I'll try not to give that to you. I'll try to give it to them over there because they're more suited for it. But if I have to, then you'll know that I had no choice. And then they go, hey, I get it then. That's fair. And that gives me predictability.
Nice. I was thinking about, we had some people that did some landscaping work at our house, and they actually put in a whole landscaping irrigation system and all these plants. And then they came back a couple years later and we're doing some cleanup and pruning. And in the process of doing that, and they did a great job of the cleanup and pruning, they cut through a lot of our landscaping, so our irrigation system, and they kind of broke it. And I'm thinking, yeah, you took on the mission of cleaning up and pruning, but you didn't really understand the mission. The goal is to have good landscaping. And so you kind of missed the point, or the real ultimate goal. And I just think that's such a powerful point about getting the real understanding of the why.
Yes.
And what the mission really is and the task really is.
Yeah, you get like a landscape company, that person's just on autopilot. They don't have any artistic input into what's going to happen. Some boss is just saying, go do this, go do this, go do this. And maybe that's the personality of that particular employee in that job field. But all of a sudden, a boss comes in and says, make it beautiful. And you're like the hairstylist or the artist or the, whoever's like, wow, look, I did it my own way. And the boss is like, holy moly, like, okay, that's exciting, and people are happy and they come out, oh my gosh, my yard's beautiful, instead of the employee that never got the why and never got to experiment and never got to delegate or experience a delegative environment.
Right. And that's where we unleash that real creativity in the person when they get to, work with us on what the real ultimate goal is, not just what we think they should do. So, all right. Well, that wraps it up for the questions. John, thank you so much. Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you to wrap us up.
All right, thank you, Tim. Hey, John, that was great. Another great session. Ended our series with a fabulous session there. So again, thank you very much for all the motivation there and the great messaging that you provided to us and to our organization. And with that, that concludes our 2021 CCDEH training series. And just a reminder to those that are listening, we have you have till June 4th to complete your evaluation. So please make sure that you complete all evaluations before the 4th or on or before the 4th. And then the certificates will be issued sometime around June 7th. With that, thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Right.
Thank you.